Everything's going good.
Presentation for almost a year now, and we get to be the first people to see it. So he will be giving a presentation to us. Hillary, I will let you do that.
Thanks, Andrea. So, Andrea, someone must have canceled, and Andrea called me last week to say can I come. Just by chance, we've been working on this PowerPoint for some time now. The young gentleman in the back, Derek Truard, you see his name, he's a data and research assistant. He's done a phenomenal job on this. And I'm not a really bad angle where I can see, kids see. Can I move this some so I can see the screen? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, let me see, okay. Good. So be warned, I'm going to try to run through this. There are a lot of slides. I didn't really have a chance to cut the slides down. So we're going to try to give you like a national perspective on what's occurred in 2020, 2021, break it down also to the state level, and more importantly to Baton Rouge, why we think things have happened and maybe some of the potential fixes that there are. The book is still open on why crime has risen the way it has over the past 2 years, and I'm sure we'll be working on this for a long time. I had a lot of people who helped, as you can see, in the office on this. There are some disclaimers that I want to make that I'm getting documents, some evidence and data from all over. I don't know how they count it, how they keep it, how they uniform or not, so just bear with what we have. It is what we have found in the research. So national statistics, you'll see that crime has risen overall in general with the violent crime. Has risen to a certain degree across the nation. And we'll see a little later, violent crime and gun-related crimes have actually significantly increased. And you'll see the national homicide statistics, it's 29% more in the last 2 years than it has been in any other time. And the numbers with the crimes with firearms are also way out of whack for the last 2 years. Here's the national homicide statistics. You'll see pre-pandemic and pandemic, one really big spike and then some others. We've never seen those spikes before across America, and that's what happened. This slide kind of is a little scary to me. I just really can't make out and figure out why. This seems to be the relation with the victim and the defendant, and it all seems to be family or friend related and not any unknown. So I just provided the slide because it was part of a research. You'll see again, we went through different statistics. Overall, aggravated assault is up 11%, and the next with the firearms with aggravated assault is up 40%. That's big numbers to be up, and you see that reflected in crime in the news that you guys report. And again, pre and post pandemic, you see the lines. You've never seen this before. Same thing next with gun assaults. You see the rise in peaks that we've had, some very lows, but also some very highs. Robbery was up as well, and keep going there. And you see it's, I'm sorry, robbery was somewhat down and slow during the pandemic. I'm assuming a lot of people are not out quite as much, and maybe that's why the robberies are down. Rape was down. Now, I don't know whether that's because of lack of reporting, because of the pandemic, or more people stay home, less chance for ability to subject themselves to rape. Property crimes, so you all heard, I'm sure the chief, I think, has talked many times, the sheriff, property crimes are way down. I think that's directly, surely related to the pandemic. People are at home, can't burglarize the house, people are more secure, so it's down 7.8%. And you see the residential burglaries, again, down pre-pandemic and post. And burglaries, again, the same, with that one big spike. I'm not sure why they have that such a huge spike around that time of the year, but not a lot of explanation as to why they had that one spike. Theft is also down, and next down. And you'll see again, really way down. Again, I think less people out and more people around their homes, so less theft, not as easy to do. This was a little bit interesting. The overall motor vehicle theft has increased. I'm not sure that it's actually the same in Baton Rouge, but I've talked to sheriffs and chiefs around the nation, and up surely up north, for some reason, motor vehicle thefts have increased tremendously there. I'm not really sure of that reason. You see the big spike as well. Arson was up. Again, I'm not exactly sure why the arson would be up unless it's related to people not having a job, maybe burning things for insurance money. That was an odd statistic. Domestic violence. From this site, this says that domestic violence either stayed static or went down. It is absolutely not the case, in my opinion. Surely is not the case in Baton Rouge, which you'll see in a minute. Derek and I looked for the stat. That is how they report it. Maybe less people have reported the domestic violence, but I just can't see this being accurate across the United States. Drug offenses, for sure, are down. Less police patrolling, less proactive patrolling with narcotics. People are inside, less police on the street. And this is a big number. This has been a nationwide trend for several years now. And you see the regional differences. So pretty much we're all the same for the most part across the country. We work with violent crime and property type crime. South being a little bit higher, but the West is actually the highest. Murder. We talked about murder. Murder is obviously up all across the country, 29, 30%. Overwhelming majority of murders are with guns. Robbery, same thing, overwhelming amount of robbery statistics. This is Louisiana numbers for 2020. Overwhelming number are with guns. Aggravated assault, same, big numbers with firearms. Again, a fairly big number. And I think a lot of the domestic violence cases where they claim nationwide that's down, they probably do not capture the data as well as we do here. And probably a lot of aggravated assaults are also domestic violence related. You'll see with the rapes for the Louisiana stats, we don't have up-to-date current information on this for some reason, as well as property crime. Not able to report on that. And then this is the one column. We'll just look at the murder column, if you would. This is 2020. It's 102 that's been reported for Baton Rouge. I just wanted you to see where Baton Rouge kind of ranks compared to the other cities. This one I did not highlight because it's not a really big number, but then you go to Lake Charles, the numbers start to increase, and then the next two cities will be Monroe, Shreveport, New Orleans. You see the big numbers. Baton Rouge is always behind New Orleans in the homicide numbers, although our numbers are fairly large. So you'll see that really 4 cities in Louisiana drive the entire homicide rate, and we're always number 1. It's because of these 4 cities. Violent crime, again, looking at the murder numbers and the increase. The alarming number is on the right-hand side, that Baton Rouge's murder rate is 46.5 per 100,000. That is not acceptable whatsoever, but it is reflective of the murders that we have. Property crime increased 10,000, a bigger number this year. A smaller number this year. Domestic violence and inter-party violence. Most cities just capture domestic violence. It is someone that lives in a home. So the definition of the domestic violence, you are in a relationship at your home when something happens. Compared to intimate partner, you're in some type of relationship, you're not necessarily living at home. We try to capture those together because we still consider those as domestic related violence. And you'll see in Baton Rouge, just the sharp number this year. Totally, as of today, we're at 35 domestic and or intimate partner related homicides. We're at, as of today, we're at 138 or 139 murders. So do math on that. Back up to domestic abuse. Last year was our worst year ever, 2020 with 19. We're pretty much doubled that. And then if you look at 2017, that was an alarming year for us. That was the year after the flood, when people were frustrated and having issues just like we are now with COVID. And we thought the numbers would be high. We didn't ever think it would reach 35. That's a big number for us to have. Other good news, I guess, with regard to domestic violence, there are generally 350 orders that are issued out of the family court. We also have criminal protective orders. Normally in years in the past, the criminal judges have only issued around 300 protective orders, but now over the last 2 years, the judges have increased that to be 300 every quarter. So a lot more protective orders being issued through the district court. So you see 35 total deaths, and this number also includes the justifiable homicides, where this year I believe we had 3 or 4 females that killed an acquaintance that was coming to do harm to them. And that's numbered as well. And this is an article from Leah and Jackie, and it's not a good number, but you see the numbers of murders that were captured in the Advocate's paper in January of this year. You see we thought 17 was going to be a really bad year, and it was. But look at 2020, we had 114. I can tell you that at the beginning of this year, our analyst, Sonia Armstrong, who prepared a lot of this, she predicted in January that we're going to be at 140 murders at the end of the year. She was unfortunately right. Here's the Baton Rouge statistics of homicide victims. Look at the big bulk of the numbers in the middle. 21 to 30-year-old or your both victims is also the same number for defendants. And then it gets down a little lower, ages 11 to 20, and unfortunately, some 1 to 10 years old. Look at this graphic that comes from the coroner's office. Look at the number of just regular natural deaths in purple. Then on top of that, how many COVID deaths Baton Rouge has had, and that's around 400, 500, you can't see. Then compare that to the left with the number of murders that we have, around 140. So although COVID has really overwhelmed everything, the number of homicide deaths we have were troubling. This is this year's numbers at the bottom compared to every other year since 2008 when I became district attorney. And it looks like when you look across the board in 2021 and 2020, every month seemed to be a summer kind of month. We always traditionally see summer months a lot more murders because kids are out of school, idle time. But starting in January, look at the number in January of murders that we had this year, starting the year off. And it's really continued that trend, unfortunately. Where people kill each other, again, Baton Rouge, you are entirely, you are safe being in Baton Rouge unless you are part of a gang, drug dealing operation involving some really bad domestic violence issues. But it does seem that the 3 zip codes that we always talk about, they're the ones that bear the bulk of the violent crime and the homicides. And you see those are 02 and 05, and then lesser in 706. I want to make sure when I say that the overwhelming majority of people that live in these zip codes that get unfairly classified as that, these are overwhelmingly good people that just want to live safe and be law-abiding. It's just a very few small amount of people that commit the majority of these offenses. And we need to really reach out and help them. Same thing, zip codes again, but also wanted you to see Baker and Zachary have started to increase their numbers, and the sheriff had a few more homicides this year so far than they normally have. And so we really need to keep an eye on Baker and Zachary because that adds to our totals as well. COVID has really set us back a lot in jury trials and people getting to court. We're really getting back in juries now. A jury that's deliberating right now. But look at the number in 2020. We only had 12 jury trials. Look where we are in 2021. That'll be 17 probably as of today. But look up higher in the years 2013, 56, 35. We average around 40 jury trials a year. I can absolutely guarantee you that if defendants or even defense lawyers, if they are not able to see a judge or a jury to know things are in progress, I have the chance of being convicted, that things come to a halt. And you'll see that I think this is telltale of that. Also, with regard to that in COVID, from 2018 on, when we started the early expedited billing, look at the jail population. Our jail population has never been this low ever. It's the lowest it's been in, I think, 50 years. We went from 2,000 all the way down to 1,100. It's probably less than that. Some would argue that we have not enough people in jail. I would tell you that I think that we are now concentrating on keeping those who are most violent in jail and those that are non-violent offenders, trying to get them out of jail as quickly as we can. This is a good number for us to take a look at. Sorry, it's hard to see that number. Oh, sorry. Trying to point out here, ever since the summer of 2016, after the officer killing, look at the number of cases that we were averaging coming in from all of the different law enforcement agencies. So that year in 2016, we had 16,000. We have steadily declined all the way down to the number of files that we received. This may be 2 or 3 defendants per file. And now, as of last year, we received 11,000 cases. Not sure where exactly we are this year, but all that, the numbers are a little foolish, but although the numbers are down, the cases are much more complicated, given cell phones, body camera, DNA, technology that we have to really go through. So that number is somewhat misleading. That is, cases have been on a decline since 2016. The other thing that's been a little troubling is the number of juvenile arrests. We have seen an increase in juvenile crime of around 8% in our office. But more alarming is the number of murders that are being committed by juveniles. This year, you see we have 14 as of November 9th. There could be others to add to that, but as of that date, that's a lot of young kids that are killing other young kids or adults. And so we hope that that trend does not continue. And here's a case that we have transferred from juvenile court in 2021. It's all the cases that we are transferring, those that are extremely most serious, including second-degree murder. 2019, we have transferred not as many, but 2019 was a difficult year. And 2020, again, we tried not to transfer juvenile cases unless public safety warrants it, and in our opinion, in these cases, we did. That was it. I also like to, we talk about murder, because murder drives everything. That's what makes the news. But what really, in our opinion, drives everything, it's a telltale sign of how good or bad your community is doing, is how many shots are fired and how many non-fatal shootings that you have. So our shots fired are a little bit down this year, not by a ton, but a little bit down. So we track as many shots that we can that are being fired throughout the year. Obviously, December is missing. There's another slide next. And you see 2021 is like the gold line up top. You see we're on a downward trend right now for shots fired, although there were several shots fired last night. We get this information from people that call in or from shot spotter coverage. And remember, we only have 10 square miles of shot spotter coverage, so we miss a lot of shots. But this collection of the data has been consistent. So hopefully that decline will continue in the shots fired. The least amount of shots fired, the least amount of people that may get hit or hurt. Good. So there we are when you see the difference we got last year, which was really high. And this year we're almost there, but hopefully we'll finish with a better number. I wanted to show you this, the next couple of slides. These are our shots fired slides that the Crime Strategies Office does. They collect all of the information with the assistance of the Police Department, Sheriff's Office, and others. We track all of the shots that are being fired, all the non-fatal shootings, and it's no surprise to you that, again, at 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning is where the red brackets is where the majority of the shooting occurs, time-wise. And by the day, look at Saturday and Sunday. See it's a peak. Next slide. And the other surprising one is the next one, the top right. Look at Monday. Monday's also been a high number of shots fired for some reason. So that's something we're taking a look at. What we do with this data is we collect it, analyze it, put it in a report, and get it out to the officers on the streets so they may better able use their patrol officers to be in certain locations and places at a certain date and time. This is the non-fatal shootings with injuries. This map overlays every murder map and every major violent crime. The map is consistent where you see these blurbs, these hotspots, and that's the zip codes that we had just talked about. Same thing with shots fired. You would overlay this map. It's going to be the same map over and over again, year after year. So again, it tells us that things are highly concentrated, and we're able to really focus more money and effort and time into these people and these places. We could potentially have a good impact. NIBIN, it's a National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. So all of the shots that I told you are fired, you saw how many they were. The police and the sheriff's office agencies, they go to these scenes and they collect the shell casings. We take those shell casings, we treat it as if it's a homicide shell casing. We fingerprint it, we DNA test it. We also then link it into this machine to see if that shell casing matches any other shell casing from another scene. That if we ever find that person with that gun, we know we have to talk to this guy. He has some information that we need. We do NIBIN testing on every shell casing that comes in, and this map again is consistent with where we are. And the yellow spots are where we have linked weapons, whether they've been used in multiple murders or multiple shootings. Very helpful for us. And this is again shots fired. Historical look at it by a month. And you see December does not have a yellow line because this is just through December 4th. But we are somewhat down for the shots fired again, which is good. Non-fatal shootings within, so we consider a non-fatal shooting is a shot that's fired and blood is drawn from the body. So this is not just you shoot at a house, this is non-fatal shootings with a hit to the body. For some reason, October was just a high month with 54, that's somewhat unusual. Okay. And again, the same zip codes with non-fatal shootings. And generally, non-fatal shooting is if you missed your intended target, you hit them and you just graze them. There's going to be retaliation from that. So these are really important for us to follow. And non-fatal shooting with injuries, and you'll see 2021, we're a little bit less than the year before, but not much. Again, as big as the homicide number is at 139, as big as the COVID deaths are, this is one that goes unnoticed, except for you folks in the press that have done a great job trying to expose this day in and day out. The number of fatal overdose deaths from heroin and or fentanyl is outrageous. It's tearing apart families. It's just taken over drug you see right now. As of the top number in the middle on the right-hand side, right now confirmed, we have 236 people that are dead, confirmed by heroin fentanyl overdose deaths. Look at the bottom number that are pending confirmation, because it takes us 4 months or so to get the confirmation. Dr. Clark in the corner has also done a phenomenal job of keeping up with this, and we're able to get this information through them. So as bad as our murder numbers are at 140, this pales in comparison to this number of people who are dead. And these are young, good, bright people of all walks of life, any color, you name it. And then consider this compared to the number of deaths from COVID. This is just a very, very big number. There is a little bit of good news. Sorry, before we get there. We talked about this with Andrea. We have some really hot spots that we see where police go to, where people are overdosing and dying. And they seem to be all at home hotels and motels. And that number, you see the numbers are big. So we want to know what's driving these folks to go to these places. Why are they going there in the first place? Why they're overdosing and dying there. We're doing a lot of research on this right now. And we really need to take a look at it as a community. Do we have the right health standards in place? Do we have the right legislation or local jurisdictional ordinances in place to take care of these types of incidents? And this is something we really need to work on, because these are really big numbers. It drives the police to a lot of calls. Again, just the overdose numbers. Look at the in the middle of April and May. It's a lot of overdoses for those 2 months. And fortunately, Narcan pen, a lot of these people are using the Narcan pen, and they come back to life immediately. So I think without Narcan, our numbers would really be double or triple. Again, the opioid overdose, the yellow is opioids, and that includes fentanyl, and the blue is just a regular overdose, because we used to see cocaine overdose, meth overdose. Now look at the numbers, it's just outrageous that it's all opioid, fentanyl versus non-opioid deaths. So that drug is really taking over the market. Now look at this map. This is the fatal overdose map in Baton Rouge for a few years. remember and recall the numbers, I showed the map and the blurbs for the homicides and non-fatals and the shots fired. Look at this map. This map's completely different. So what this tells you, which is scary, is that overdoses, people are getting drugs and using drugs all over the parish, and they're dying all over the parish, which means any religion, any color, any place, any source of money that you may be receiving, you are subject to being overdosed and dying if you use heroin, particularly heroin cut with fentanyl, and oftentimes you don't know it. And we have most recently found, we have found fentanyl in marijuana, we found fentanyl in cocaine, and a lot of people that are not wanting to use fentanyl are getting it unknowingly, and unfortunately, on some occasions, dying. So, also was really interesting, the Baton Rouge Business Report did a presentation about how the economy was going in Baton Rouge. One of the slides that they showed was when the stimulus checks hit the market, and Dr. Scott was doing this. What he did, he was saying about how much people bought because they got the check, where did they spend their money. The dates just seem to be, to me, really just relevant. So we went back and asked the crime strategies folks, take a look at when the checks hit, and right after when the checks hit, did we have an increase in overdose deaths and overdoses from heroin? And the answer was yes. So unfortunately, people may have used that money for illegal drugs instead of anything else. You see there's a little bit of a good news, a slight decline in the fatal and non-fatal overdoses, so hopefully the trend will eventually continue. And you see the number, it seems to be taking a really good dive right now, so we hope that that continues through the end of the year and beginning of next year. Again, the numbers are just, look at that's a lot of people that are overdosing, and we still have a month to go. So, why is all this stuff happening? We've looked around the research, and there is found there's different reasons why people think that this has occurred there. So, limited law enforcement agencies, Baton Rouge Police is 100 or 115 down. I think the sheriff is down. I think that impacts them tremendously. We did have a lot of unrest and protests where police were called away from where they were at the time. Police legitimacy, do people trust the police because of things that are going on around the nation? Are they calling the police? And so they're looking at social unrest versus depolicing. That is, are people calling the police? So they're taking things in their own hands. Surely we see that folks that are involved with murder, they do take things in their own hands. They don't rely on the police, and we have a retaliatory shooting. So there's a lot of things and reasons why we believe that this is going on. Lack of personnel, lack of resources, just manpower shortage, and other things such as that. This is also cited in the literature, the increase in gun sales. So from 2020 on, lots of guns are being sold. I don't want to say that this is any reason why we have a spike in homicides, because I can tell you we have tried to track any new purchase of a weapon. We have not found any new purchase of a weapon by a lawful owner. We have not found them to be involved in any crime or homicide at this point. Now, these are new purchases, but for sure, people that leave their guns in their car, leave their house open, they're coming to get your gun. That gun is going to be used in a shooting. It's going to be used in a homicide. It could be just a matter of time that these guns, if they're not secured and not locked, could be used in a homicide or a non-fatal shooting. So we have to wait to see if this increase in gun sales may lead to increase in or thefts of weapons and use of weapons illegally. Some potential solutions, what can we do? I mean, you saw the hotspot mapping. We really need to focus on those hotspots. These are the people that are most affected. They're the poorest. They don't get to the government services that they need to. They're cut off. They're distrustful of law enforcement. How can we find ways to get these folks in these very small segments of our community help? How can we reach out with officers to do a better job of police legitimacy? And that includes not only police, but DAs and sheriffs and courts. There got to be ways that we can do this. Street stops have been down, traffic stops have been down, and that could be another reason why maybe the crime is as it is, not enough police to police the streets. People feel a little more brazen. You have noticed this year many more daytime shootings, daytime murders, and we've seen that also across the country. We really need to improve our gang network analysis. We still have around 30 or so groups or gangs here, and they really create a lot of trouble for us. Again, if you're not in the gang activity, not in drug dealing, Baton Rouge is a safe place for gangs and drugs, controlled murder, and Baton Rouge get controlled shooting. We have to find a way to get to these kids to have them not want to become a member of a gang. We have to find them services. We have to get to them earlier than we ever have before. Criminal justice reform, again, I think will go a long way in trying to get more police legitimacy with the public. Can we reach out to them and let them know what we're doing, be better stewards with the trust that we have, and we need the public to cooperate. Those that are doing retaliatory shootings are not wanting to cooperate with the police, whether it's because of lack of trust or not. They're going to handle it in their own business, but that really can't happen because things really get out of control when that happens, and that's what's pretty much going on now. So these are some of the studies. It's just the appendix of some of the cities that, in the studies that we looked at, have been where the numbers come from. So just for your newspaper news folks, if you want to look at those studies, that's the cities that were included. I think they're two separate studies, one with 13 and one with 17. So, you know, all the things that we all try to do, whether it's a group violence reduction strategy, whatever it is, if it does not come from the ground up, from the family up, we're just not going to win the battle. And there's a lot of fixes to this, but if we don't fix our family first, we don't have parents that actually being parents and not friends, we don't get these young kids educated with a really good, strong public education, we're going to continue being in the same condition and predicament that we're in. To me, education is key to it all. Getting these young children early, getting these young children's parents early, and making sure that parents know your son who is 14 should not be having a semi-automatic weapon in his home. Why is he belonging to a gang? You know he's belonging to a gang. Why does he have drugs? Why is he flashing money? These are really bad signs. So we need to find ways to help these young parents to get to these children as early as we can, because in my opinion, that's really the only way. I am really confident that Cito Narcisse, our new superintendent, he's doing a great job. We've met with him multiple times, and I think he has a really good vision to really restructure our public education in Baton Rouge. One study that we are trying to do, so if anyone here has a lot of money, looking for around $150,000 to conduct a study with the state schools, local school board here, and all of our law enforcement agencies as well as LSU. What we'd like to do is study a year, possibly 2019, with people in school at that year. We want to look at and triage every victim and every defendant to find out, because they're generally dropped out of school at 9th grade, and what we can see from a higher view. Can we find where there were gaps in services that we missed, school system missed, the government missed, where we could have gotten this child, their family, help and services before they wound up on either side of the weapon. And I think that's going to be a really interesting study. We think we know what the result will be, but until we study it and look at the data, present it to the people, say this is really where we need to concentrate our efforts and our money on schools and kids, because that's our future. So we're hoping to get that off the ground maybe in a few months, but it is costly. It does take a lot of work. Unfortunately, a lot of homicides and a lot of background checks to be done to have a real successful data-oriented study. So with that, I would like to answer any questions that anyone has.
You mentioned the shots fired. On June 27th of 2019, our good folks at WAFB did a spectacular feature in which they showed former State Troopers Association's Executive Director David Young firing a pistol. Everything was filmed. Previously had held his daughter's boyfriend at bay, false imprisonment. When they did that feature, I added that to a list of cases I followed. I would track every month to see what happened. There was never even an arraignment, so I contacted Rob Hayes on March 8th of this past year. He said, look, I'll look into that right now, and he did a follow-up feature. They didn't go out and interview you, but they did a follow-up feature and they said, quote, East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney Helen Moore said Tuesday, March 9th, his office carefully reviewed the facts of the case before deciding not to move forward with prosecution. So at this time, can you elaborate on why, when you have video of a gentleman firing a pistol at random at a very heavily traveled area on Jefferson Highway, and all of that's captured on video, your office opted not to prosecute?
Sure. I mean, I can try to recall as much as I can, but my recollection is it was not a random shooting. It was shooting at someone in particular, and you have to know what the background was up to that. That was him and the person that he was dealing with, and his daughter was dealing with at that time at his office. It was totally inappropriate for what he did. Based on the circumstances I saw, what he did on his own with the psychological evaluations and the work that he did and documents that I was provided, I thought that at that point, that was the best resolution for that case, particularly when I had witnesses who refused to cooperate. If you wish, I'd surely like you to come to the office. We could surely sit down when I have the file in front of me, and I can give you more information than I can recall at this point.
All right. Are you concerned about the look that may show to the public that there's one set of rules for law enforcement and their associates versus John Q. Public?
Sure. I mean, everything that we do comes with the risk that either what you say or what you do is going to be taken the wrong way. And that's why I try to explain as much as you can. It's always hard to explain often in 20 seconds on a television show, a little easier with a newspaper article. Sure, you want to be as even as you can, but you have to judge people by what they did and what the facts and circumstances are, and what's in our control and what's not. Witnesses are a huge part.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
You said that overall the number of cases being referred for prosecution has gone down since 2016. Do you have any idea why?
It just seemed to happen after the Alton Sterling shooting. The numbers just seemed going down. You saw it in that slide. Less police. I mean, look, we're 115 short, and I'm told maybe statistically that per officer you generate around 400 new files. So that could be a really big reason why we're just down that number of officers. But that's kind of the other things distracting police what they're doing. Others, COVID, I think it's had a big impact on that because COVID affected police officers just like it did anyone else. But I think that's probably the reason why. Yes.
You mentioned the increase in juveniles that are committing crimes. Do we know what's driving that? I mean, can we put a finger on what's pushing that?
Sure, I think it's gangs and drugs, just like anything else. I also think that a lot of this beef that goes on is social media. And when we were locked down a lot, social media was the way that everyone messed with each other. You're beefing, social media. And not often were maybe people getting out, less travel folks. And now once things started to open up, you started to say, okay, I had that beef on social media. Now we're face to face. Now I got to do something. And it resulted in a shooting. And so, yes, I think it's just like the adult crime. It's groups, it's gangs, it's beefs, it's drugs. That's what it's all about. Yes,
Excuse me, I think you had said that property crime had gone down in recent years. Do you have a sense of whether that is, if there's a difference between, say, crimes at businesses versus crimes at residences versus against personal people's property rather than businesses?
Yeah.
And do you have a sense of whether property crime against businesses is kind of coming back up, staying the same, or any sort of trends in that direction?
So the two slides, one was residential, the other was non-residential. Both appeared to be down. But to your point, recently, I think more business burglaries and also more sophisticated business burglaries have occurred. I think there was a Wall Street Journal article yesterday or the day before where they're now organized groups that are going into businesses and committing these offenses. So that is a scary part to it, but it has been down generally. I think a lot of it is that either maybe lack of reporting. A lot of it is people at home protecting their stuff and you're afraid to go in someone's house when the business was closed. So it makes sense that those numbers were down. But I do see them increasing now.
You do see them coming back up?
At least on a nationwide.
So on a nationwide basis, you're not sure
I
exactly
actually didn't study a whole lot of burglary, but I could find that number. But I know nationally, it seems to be on an upward trend.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have read that some perpetrators can come up with bail amounts of $5,000 or even $10,000 cash, they pull out of their pockets and they walk right out again. Can we not assume that money is a product, is poison fruit, and seize it and refuse to accept it and they go to jail?
Good question. Yes, a lot of people make bail before we even notify someone that we'd like to have a hearing, we'd like for them to stay in jail, take a look at the rap sheet. That happens. We are trying to have that not happen by trying to get information that someone's being arrested and the person has multiple offenses, ABL and multiple bonds, there's a danger to the community, particularly domestic violence offenders, to try to let the judge know as much as we can to say, would you please take a look at this defendant or hold him at least for some time so we can have a hearing to determine what's the most appropriate bond. Because wealthy people have money and can get out of jail faster than poor people. That is one of the reasons against cash bail system. And so you want to get away from that. You want to have the people who are violent offenders stay in jail. We do see social media like all you all see, where they're flashing money. I'm on the way to the jail, and here's these gazillions of dollars that they're flashing, and they post it, and they're out within a very short period of time. So cash bail, I think we need to study our cash bail system, and I think that we ought to look at a risk analysis tool that we can give to defendants when they come in, say, what are your risks, what are your needs, and let a judge and everyone, the public defender and DA, will have some input to say, look, before this guy bonds out, which he is entitled to bail and bond, can we just breathe a little bit more instead of you letting him go that quickly? But that is an issue. We can't assume that the money is illegal. We have to prove that. All right.
If it becomes available, do you have any programs in mind for use of federal dollars that might help you, move our parish forward in your job?
So the mayor has a lot of stuff. Money all comes through the mayor's office. So I know that she is doing a lot of things right now that are in the plans and the progress. So right now, that's what we're waiting to see actually how that money will be used. But look, you see the numbers. It's just highly concentrated in certain places and certain people, and that's where they're waving their hands. But when you walk through those neighborhoods, and you probably have, when you walk through those neighborhoods that just are ridden with poverty and gunshots, overwhelming people run out of their house to grab law enforcement, to say a prayer with them, to say thanks when you come back. So the idea that people in the community don't like or respect police, I think that gets more attention in certain places. They do. They want the right touch of police, obviously. So yes, we need to find a way to concentrate on those. Andrew?
You've talked a lot about gangs today, and especially young people. I'm curious if truce is having much of an effect, if you think that ever since Brave ended, we've seen an uptick in gang activity. What do you think?
If you saw the murder numbers, it was not for Brave to take any credit, but if you saw the murder numbers after we began the Brave year, look at 2013, the numbers went down to 66 to 62, and then we kind of lost it, and then in 2016 with the flood, kind of got out of it, and Brave was no longer. It's Truce. Truce was funded by private dollars. We're running out of private dollars in February. We're looking to try to find money to continue Truce, which really pays for counselors. But at this point, as of today, I believe, we have 36 kids that are in the Truce program. So that's 36 kids that wouldn't be having any type of counseling otherwise. So the whole key to this all, with the hotspots for kids, is getting them one-on-one attention by somebody. It shows they're important, your life has meaning. So, it's hard to answer. We'd like to say that there's been less murders, but look at the numbers this year. The question is, could we have had more murders if we didn't get those 36 kids who are potential victims and defendants? It's all about getting them help. And look, these kids who are shooters and victims and shooters themselves, these are some talented kids that are extremely bright, and you have to get through that to get to them and let them see a way out. As I'm telling you, we've sat down with some of these kids who are completely, really violent kids, but have a different side. Once you're able to get through them, and are very, very talented, you could have a successful life. And they're the future of Baton Rouge. We need to help them. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if it was on CBS or ABC last night, but there was an excellent program on adoptions. I don't know if you happened to catch part of that.
I did not see that.
An excellent program.
On adoption of children or also adopting a child that's needy?
Both.
Okay. Obviously, any kind of structure that you can get these young folks is good because they just have no structure. And you can see it in juvenile court, the juvenile defendant, when the mom shows up, just sit there and watch and listen. You can have a pretty good idea why the kid is in the position it's in. I'm sorry.
It's a good one. As a friend and classmate and district attorney who I think is doing a phenomenal job. Next year, do you plan to test the waters on anything else?
How hot are the waters? I don't know. There's a lot going on in the legislature. You know, we are trying to revamp our office. To tell you the truth, we're in the middle of a study. We have an outside group that are coming in to take a look at how we do things. I've been in the business now at the DA's office for 46 years. We've always done things exactly the same way because that's how we've always done things. We want to take a look outside in and inside out of how we do things. So you saw the number of domestic violence murders at 35. I have one assistant DA that handles domestic violence. 20% of our cases are domestic violence. We get around 2,000 to 2,500 gun cases per year. I don't have a gun section because I can't afford that. I have 140 murders right now. I have 200 others waiting to be tried. I have 50 lawyers. I have so many young lawyers. Murders take a year to 3 years, and add COVID, it takes 2 more years. And go back to the flood year when we missed that year. Every hurricane, every ice day shuts the court down, shuts it down, continues the case. It's not good. It's not good for either side of the case. So we really need to look at how we are moving and handling cases. Look at the jury trial numbers are 21. So you talk about the halls of justice. Actually, justice is in the halls, not the halls of justice. That's where we resolve the majority of our cases. Is that right or wrong? Not sure if that's how it's going now. So we really need to find a way to move these cases, but it's easier to say than done because these are people. And it's justice, you have defendants and victims. Tough go, but we just need to find a way. And look, I like our public defender. She's going to do a phenomenal job. She replaced Mike Richard, who's a great public defender. I think we're really fortunate to have the public defender that we have in Baton Rouge, and we're working together with her to come up with some good ideas. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like you to comment on the case in Michigan where the parents were arrested for homicide. Do you think this is something that there should be more of?
I think these two ladies have written on that, and maybe another in the paper. So it's called gun owner responsibility laws. You will never get, in my opinion, you will never get the legislature to pass that law. Here, we're a big gun state, because what that says is that if you're a gun owner, you have to be responsible for your gun. So you can't leave your gun behind. If you leave your gun behind, you're responsible for what happens. And we do see a lot of kids that are killed with a gun that's left behind unattended. But we don't have that owner responsibility law here like we do in other states. And so right now that could not happen here. We would have to find a different statute to try to charge someone. And the only one is like child neglect, carries up to 30 days in jail and a $100 fine, which is not adequate to cover that. Or the only other way we can do that is to charge someone that's maybe a felon and had a gun that was used, and charge them with felon in possession of a weapon. So whenever you see children that take a gun from a aunt, uncle, dad's house and they kill themselves accidentally, everyone looks to say, are you to prosecute that person? Well, there's not a law first to do that. And normally when you find these parents that was their gun and their child took it and they shot themselves accidentally, like leaving a baby in your car and intending the baby dies, these people have been punished. They're living the rest of their life in prison. It's hard to exact any other type of really punishment from someone just lost their own child because of their neglect. It's a tough cases.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much.